Hello everyone, and welcome to the IFST Food Waste Webinar, What About the Packaging? This is the fifth in a series of webinars on food waste co-organised by IFST's Midlands branch, Food Regulatory and Sustainability Steering Groups. My name is Sam Jennings and I am Chair of the IFST Food Regulatory Group. When food is lost or wasted, it impacts the environment and the economy and wastes resources at a time when many people can't access enough food to eat. To better understand food loss and food waste and identify opportunities to prevent it, IFST has created this webinar series on food waste. In this fifth webinar today, we will explore food packaging. We will look at what constitutes food packaging waste, the producer responsibilities around such waste, and which food businesses might have a packaging obligation. We will also look at an example of a company that has developed fully compostable packaging for its products. The next webinar in the series will review how food waste can be used to help feed those in need through redistribution. It's worth mentioning that our IFST Spring Conference, SC21, at the end of April, will have a dedicated panel discussion session on smart packaging, addressing food packaging development strategy, policy, trends, and solutions. So keep an eye on our IFST events page and email alerts for further details. To support understanding around this topic, IFST has already published an information statement of food waste for technical professionals to refer to, and a fact sheet aimed more at the general public. You can find these on our IFST website. Next slide, please. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared on IFST's website. Feel free to make comments and ask questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A function, which should be at the bottom of your screen. This can also be used in the case of any technical difficulties. There will be a Q&A session after the presentations where we will respond to as many of these questions as possible, and I will ask the speakers your questions. Our speakers today are Linda Creighton and Charles Bourne. Linda jointly leads the work on packaging extended producer responsibility for the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Before joining Defra in 2018, Linda worked in a number of roles at WRAP. Charles is Managing Director of Westaways Sausages, which was the winner of the 2020 UK Packaging Innovation Award. Charles describes himself as an entrepreneur that likes to set up and organise companies that have the potential to be disruptive and innovative in their sector. For more information on their biographies, please look at the IFST website. So, without further ado, I will hand over to you, Linda.
Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be able to join you for this webinar today. And I'm going to give you an overview of the policy framework for packaging and packaging waste, a topic I know that has been the subject of much discussion and proposed change. Obviously, as Sam explained, I work for Defra, so I'm going to give a UK government perspective. Packaging waste and producer responsibility is a devolved responsibility across the UK, but in many areas, particularly in terms of extended producer responsibility and our proposals for deposit return schemes, we are working jointly with our colleagues in the governments of the devolved administrations. So the policy context really for packaging, resources, waste and the environment in England is the Resources and Waste Strategy, which was published at the end of 2018. And really this document sets out the government's policy framework for waste and resources. In particular, it stresses the importance of minimising waste, promoting resource efficiency and moving towards a circular economy whereby we keep materials and resources in the economic cycle for as long as possible. And as I say, that framework really provides the basis for our proposals around packaging and packaging waste. And in that document in particular, the government made a number of key commitments. First of all, there was a commitment to reform the current packaging producer responsibility regime, a system that has been in place since 1997, so well over 20 years old. We also committed, subject to consultation, to look at proposals for a deposit return scheme for drinks containers. And we also made a number of commitments in terms of introducing much greater consistency in the provision of collection and recycling services, both for households and businesses. That included commitments in relation to dry recyclable materials, as well as separate food waste collections. So as I say, that circular economy thinking, that circular economy framework translates to packaging. And if we look at that cycle of the circular economy, thinking about how products are actually made in the first place, how are they consumed and used, and how at end of use do we get the materials and resources back into new products and materials, as I say, to retain them in the context of the circular economy, retain them within the economy. And a number of our measures that we're proposing for packaging fit with different aspects of that circular economy cycle. So, for example, the government is introducing a tax on plastic packaging. That tax will come in 2020, and that tax is designed to create demand for recycled material in the production of packaging. In terms of the design of packaging and the use of packaging, then we're looking at a number of policy measures. Key amongst that is our proposals to reform the packaging producer responsibility regime and introduce packaging extended producer responsibility, and I'll speak in a little more detail on that in a minute or two. Linked to that, we are also undertaking a review of our packaging essential requirements regulations, which are the regulations that are actually set requirements in terms of the design of packaging and the content of packaging when it's placed on the market. And we have some other very specific measures whereby we target certain types of packaging. So, for example, the charges on single-use items such as carrier bags. So they're designed to reduce the number of single-use items that we use. I've mentioned as well that we have proposals subject to consultation to introduce a deposit return scheme for drinks containers. And again, that mechanism is designed to both incentivize consumers to recycle, but it's also designed to get more material and cleaner material back into the economy and back into manufacturing. And a number of our measures then also target the resource recovery and waste management stages of the circular economy, particularly our proposals to introduce more consistent provision for recycling and waste collection services. Our proposals for packaging extended producer responsibility will place the costs of managing packaging waste at end of life on producers. We are also proposing labelling on packaging to make it much clearer to consumers as to what to do with that packaging at end of life. Do they recycle it? Do they have to put it in their residual bin? And in various ways, government is also, particularly through some funding initiatives and capital programmes, supporting innovation in treatment and reprocessing technologies. So our sort of approach to policy is inclusive, it's circular, it's targeting all aspects of the circular economy. So in terms of outcomes and what we're seeking to achieve from our policy proposals in respect of packaging, then what we want to see is more packaging designed to be recyclable. We want to see unnecessary packaging reduced, and by unnecessary packaging we mean packaging that can be removed altogether. It's packaging that we can do without, or where less packaging could be used. We do types of packaging introduced, and one of the areas where we've seen a lot of progress in the last few years is the removal of undetectable black plastic packaging, which is obviously challenging to recycle because of the sorting requirements that it demands. As I say, not only do we want packaging to be designed to be more recyclable or more reused or refillable packaging, we also want to make sure that the packaging is actually collected and is actually recycled, and the quality of that material is improved. And we want to see less packaging being littered. So that's the key kind of packaging outcomes we're seeking to achieve through our sort of policy proposals. But when we actually look at wider system outcomes, then obviously we want to, through our measures, by creating increased supply of material, creating demand for that recycled material, we want to stimulate development of reprocessing, more reprocessing capacity in the UK. We want to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the system for managing packaging waste. And we want to improve people's knowledge of what they can do with packaging at end of life. As I say, can they recycle it, can't they recycle it? And that we see that increased knowledge reflected in positive recycling behaviours on behalf of consumers. So these are our kind of high level outcomes for policy. So if I just broadly just talk through the key reforms that in particular that Defra is leading on. First of all, I mentioned that we've had a producer responsibility scheme in place for packaging since '97. It's been subject to much criticisms, particularly in the last few years, and we as government recognise that it really doesn't deliver the objectives that we now see as being important, and some of the things that I've just covered. So our proposals are to introduce extended producer responsibility for packaging. We consulted on our initial proposals back in 2019, and we will shortly be consulting on our more detailed final policy proposals for packaging extended producer responsibility. But the gist of these packaging reforms is that producers will pay the full net cost of managing packaging that they place on the market, consistent with the polluter pays principle. The fee structure that we introduce under producer responsibility will be designed to create the right incentives for businesses to design and use packaging that is more sustainable. So focusing on some of these outcomes that I've just described, that we want, obviously the fees paid by producers will go to support a cost-effective and efficient system for managing packaging waste. We will be looking to set higher packaging recycling targets in the future, and we are proposing that all packaging is labelled, and our ultimate intention is a binary labelling system whereby packaging is either labelled as recyclable or labelled as not recyclable or don't recyclable or don't recycle. And our proposals will also bring forward options for new scheme administration and governance arrangements, whereby we want to, through these arrangements, ensure that producers have a lot of input and into the operation of a future producer responsibility scheme. In terms of our proposals for a deposit return scheme for drinks containers, then our proposals here specifically refer to England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Many of you will be aware that Scotland already has regulations in place for a deposit return scheme for drinks containers, and the Scottish scheme is expected to start operating in mid-2022. So again, consumer, in terms of DRS, this is where many of you will have experience of DRS schemes and operating in countries that already have DRS schemes, but it's essentially where consumers are charged a deposit when they buy a drinks container that's within scope of the scheme, and they can redeem their deposit when they return that empty container to a designated collection point. we are proposing that PET plastic bottles, metal cans and glass bottles would be captured under the DRS, subject to further consultation. And we are wanting to ensure that it is made easy for consumers to return their drinks containers. So we're proposing that that retailers selling drinks containers should host a return point. That could be a reverse vending machine, or it could be a manual return point. And again, a new scheme like this, new DRS, requires appropriate governance and management. So again, the proposal is that a deposit management organisation would be appointed to manage the operations of the DRS on a day-to-day basis and be responsible for achieving high collection targets for the containers. And the collection targets would be specified in the regulations. Final sort of key sort of proposed area of reform relates to household and business recycling collections. The proposals are quite extensive. I focused here on the ones that are specifically relevant to packaging, but the basis of the proposals is that local authorities, in terms of provision of services to households and businesses, would be required to collect a core set of materials, and we want to make sure that there's clarity over what can and can't be recycled, so that we can increase the quantity and quality of material collected for recycling. And the core set of materials that certainly we're proposing in terms of dry recyclables are paper and card, glass, plastic bottles and plastic pots, tubs and trays, and metal packaging. And further material that we anticipate being included in that core set of dry recyclables subject to consultation are foil trays and aerosols, so other types of metal packaging, food and drink cartons and plastic films. And as I mentioned when I was referring to our proposals for packaging extended producer responsibility, the collection of packaging materials would be supported by EPR payments, so producer fees. The other key sort of policy provision in terms of packaging is obviously the plastics packaging tax. That was also consulted on initially back in 2019, but since then the government has announced and confirmed its proposals for a plastic packaging tax. The tax is at £200 per tonne of plastic packaging, which does not contain at least 30% recycled plastic content. And following the budget earlier this month, the primary legislation to introduce the plastic packaging tax is expected to be published as part of the finance bill, so imminently. And as I said, the intention of the tax is to drive the demand for more recycled material. The Defra measures will support the supply of more packaging materials for recycling. Just to sum up then, we are planning for second consultations on our 3 major packaging and collection reforms to be published shortly. The Environment Bill is critical to our ability to implement our reforms. They will provide the new legal framework to take forward the reforms. The Environment Bill was introduced back in January 2020, and it has been paused in the current session of Parliament, but it's anticipated that the bill will restart its passage through Parliament early in the second session of the current Parliament. So hopefully sometime after Easter recess and the new session starts. Just a big thank you for those of you who've been engaged in our process of reform so far, who've supported us in stakeholder groups and who've have inputted to previous consultations. A big thank you. And as I say, we really do hope to be publishing our next round of consultations very shortly. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, or hello, everybody. I don't know where you all are. And thank you hugely to Linda there. I found that really concise and very useful. And I hope I can keep the standard up. So I'm Charles Bourne, Managing Director of a family-owned sausage company in the middle of Devon. And my presentation is called The Plastic Age. So I really believe that we are in what could be called the plastic age at the moment. This plastic age started about the 1960s, and certainly when I was a kid in the early 60s, going shopping was very different, and there certainly weren't plastic carrier bags and those types of things. The actual amount of plastic produced every year is, to my mind, quite a staggering 400 million tons. And in actual fact, the cumulative production of plastic since the 1960s is around about 8 billion tons. So that, pardon my simple maths, is about 1 ton for every person on the planet alive today. My statistics that I've used are kind of gleaned from many different websites, and I do apologize if they're inaccurate or wrong, but I've seen it quoted that 79% of all the plastic produced to date is in the environment still, either as in our oceans or in landfill. And so there is a huge legacy here. And we don't really know enough yet about the long-term impact of microplastics, which are grabbing more and more headlines. So what is the consumer's viewpoint? And this is changing. We are seeing that people are getting more and more concerned. And here are 2 figures from 2019 and 2020. And here we've got eco-actives, eco-considerers, and eco-dismissers. And so the biggest change here is the eco-dismisser, who said, well, look, I can't do anything about this, and it's outside my world. I'm not that interested. That was 49%. It's now 41%. People are getting more and more concerned about what's going on. And, you know, the retailers are clearly reacting to this increasing concern. And, you know, there's some excellent initiatives out there. And there's our friends at one of the UK's biggest retailers, remove, reduce, reuse, and recycle. And Linda made good reference to that in her piece there. But all I would say is that I've dug out another statistic, and I'm not totally sure if this is accurate, but it does come from a Defra report that recycling has plateaued. Now, I know there's some new figures out, but there is some degree of information out there that says that, you know, we still have a lot of work to do on recycling. So I'm a sausage maker, and so that's my kind of area of expertise. And I'm thinking about this figure here, you know, the UK groceries market using approximately 1 million tons of plastic every year. So I thought, well, you know, how am I going to represent what that looks like? do I kind of say the number of double-decker buses or the number of male African elephants or whatever? Well, I came up with the Burj Khalifa, and the Burj Khalifa is a socking great big building in the Middle East, and that building there weighs about 500,000 tons. So I thought that gave you a pretty good idea of the amount of plastic that we're using here in the UK to package our groceries every year. And we've got a waste management system. You know, only 25% of the world have any form of waste management system. So as consumers, who are we expecting to really respond to cut this plastic waste? And again, I found this rather interesting statistic. And it was, consumers ultimately are expecting manufacturers to sort this out. And they see us as manufacturers being really, it's happening on our watch, we should do something about it. And I think that Linda's piece made that very clear, that, you know, we're going to use taxation and regulation to force manufacturers to actually adopt systems that are in the best interests of addressing the issue of plastic waste. So I then thought, right, what are we going to do about this? And this has been a project that I've been working on for about 4 years. And so our sausages typically were delivered in I'm afraid to say, in black plastic trays until we turned to clear plastic trays. They were wrapped in a film, a plastic film, and they had a cardboard sleeve on. And so this particular pack here is the pack that we won UK Packaging Innovation of the Year last year, and it's we've replaced the cardboard tray we replaced the plastic tray with a cardboard tray, which is made from sustainably sourced wood pulp, and of course it's uncoated and is recyclable and is certified as home and industrially compostable. So we, as a tiny little company, have managed to use around about 30 tons less plastic every year, just on this one product. So I thought, well, what would happen if everybody changed? And the UK uses an estimated 11 million plastic trays a week to sell sausages. So if everybody changed, well, it's not quite the Burj Khalifa, but it's a substantial part, and maybe it sets a style that can be followed by others. And who knows, we might get, you know, even 1% is 1% better. But I'm certainly very proud of what we've managed to do as with very little external support. But there was one real issue that remained, and you will see a film that goes around those sausages. You can see it there on the end, and that, to my mind, looks like flexible plastic. So flexible plastic, such as the overwrap, makes up around about 25% of UK plastic waste. However, only 4% of this is actually currently recycled. So Peter Maddox, who I didn't know, but I found a quote from him, a former director of WRAP, said that developing a recycling system for flexible plastics is undoubtedly the biggest challenge that we face in order to meet the Plastic Pact's targets by 2025. Now, again, some big statements there, some statistics. Again, I apologize if I've got them slightly wrong or whatever, but I'm just mentioning it to really set the context. So I thought, right, what are we going to do about this plastic then? And so we have, in the words of Blackadder, we have a cunning plan. And here it is. We've got this polymer that has been developed by German chemists and combined it with Italian engineering brilliance and used it to overwrap our sausage packs. So we're the first company in the UK to use this film and the first in the world to use it for meat products. It is certified as home and industrial compostable and suitable for organic recycling. So it's a random polymer, and this polymer is broken down by microbial action in a home compost situation, and it's polybutylene diapate terephthalate. It won Best Packaging Award for the Fabry Group, who are the Italian engineering brilliance company based in northern Italy. And TUV in Austria have certified it for both home and industrial composting. So this is organic recycling. So I put, when I was testing this, I put it in our compost heap at home, and it breaks down fully to leave no harmful residues or microplastics. In actual fact, that took about 57 days in my compost heap to completely disappear. I found that absolutely amazing. So here is my little team. We're a husband and wife team. You've got Melissa, who does the marketing, and Paddy in production, and Tim in technical. So we really are very small, but we do believe that the long-term damage created by the plastic age can be reduced. It will take leadership, it will take innovation, and it will take collaboration. And here we have a little pictures that show a pack of our sausages. Well, that's our family pack, with some typical food waste going into my compost heap on the 15th of May. And 57 days later, the film has disappeared, and the sleeves disappeared, and the trays disappeared. And the next slide shows some trials in our offices where I am actually growing growing vegetables from the packaging. So to my mind, this as a simple sausage maker is just one idea that we can use. I realize it's not going to be a total solution, but it just shows you an approach that might be relevant. And I'd be really interested to find out what the audience thinks of it. And I think we can now move on to some questions, and I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Charles, and also Linda. There's been two very interesting presentations. So we're now moving on to today's Q&A session. And just as a reminder, you can submit questions using the Q&A function, which should be at the bottom of your screen. You may need to hover over your screen if you're using a mouse, or touch the screen with a tablet or iPad. So moving on to our first questions, Charles, we've had a question here, is how much of a cost impact has there been on your business in using the recyclable compostable packaging?
There has been costs. There's been a huge amount of trials and experimentation, making sure that we had validation and verification for the things that we've done. And there are some associated costs with producing something at fairly small scale, but it is cost neutral to our customers.
That's excellent. And Linda, I'm going to sort of try and jump between the two of you here. So
the resources and waste strategy was to implement from 2023, and clearly a lot's happened since then, so we have had to be mindful of that, and as I say, have been reviewing our timelines, and final proposals will be included in the consultations.
Brilliant, thank you. And going on to, oh, they're all coming in now very quickly. And right, I'm trying to sort of pick between these. Okay. I've got here a question, Charles, going on to the film that you produce, is it suitable for MAP? Now I haven't got I think I'm just seeing if what MAP stands for, but somebody else.
I can answer that.
Do you package MAP conditions and by heat sealing? So that's
yeah,
obviously another link question.
No, the PBAT at the moment, the issues are that if I've got a cardboard tray and I'm trying to put weld a film to the lid of it, then that doesn't work unless you have some form of coating. And so I did investigate using MAP, modified atmosphere packaging, but what we've done is, in actual fact, we've reduced the amount of oxygen in the pack by making the packaging smaller, in actual fact, and so we have less oxygen in the pack, so there is less opportunity for food going off. In actual fact, preliminary work is showing that the film PBAT is actually got giving us a slightly better shelf life than conventional PE or PVC overwraps. So this is an overwrap film rather than a top lidding film.
Right, thank you. And that actually leads on quite nicely, your answer there, to the one question is, can you advise what the entire shelf life is on the film from initial production?
We've got batch codes on the film when it comes into us that tells us how long we've got to use it. But we are actually putting it onto frozen products that we are selling into countries that actually have controls on packaging waste. Some of the islands like Barbados and Malta are very keen on us and the work that we're doing, and there the frozen items have got a year's life on, and so there is limited oxygen and light available to actually a microbial action to break down the random polymers. So we've got clearance on that. And obviously when we're storing the film in roll format, we're careful with the storage to make sure that, again, there's no risk of microbial action.
Right, thank you. Right, I'm going to come back to Linda. We've got a question, is Defra offering any support on research and development around recycled plastic or compostable materials for long life products? The questioner is saying, my understanding is that these all have very useful applications for short shelf life, but not for long life, looking at sort of 3 years plus.
Defra specifically doesn't have any research sort of funding for new packaging innovation and developments, but UK Research and Innovation has a fund, the Smart Sustainable Packaging, the Smart Sustainable Plastic Packaging Research Fund, and certainly they have had several rounds of funding programs linked to further development of plastic packaging, both in terms of the packaging innovation design as well as ways of recycling and increasing the treatment of plastic packaging once it's been used. So there might be opportunities through that sort of funding.
Could I add that we certainly managed to use the R&D tax credit scheme to actually help fund what we've done. You know, we've probably spent 150,000 to 200,000 pounds on this, which for a small company is quite a gamble. But we just felt strongly enough that something had to be done. Right,
thank you. And now this probably comes to both of you in a way, because you might both have feedback on this, has there been any government or industrial conversations around considering the use of plant-based packaging to mitigate packaging waste?
If I start from a government perspective, yeah, certainly this is an area that we have been looking into, and jointly with our colleagues in Bays, we ran a call for evidence, particularly in relation to the need for standards for bio-based, biodegradable and compostable plastics, because clearly all these products are being made to different standards and they break down to varying degrees. I noted that Charles specifically made the point that the packaging that they use, film packaging that they use, is certified as home and industrial compost, as being home or industrial compostable. A lot of the packaging that's put on the market isn't. And so we have got some, as I say, some work going on to determine whether there's a need for some greater standards in this area. And again, we hope to be able to publish the feedback from the call for evidence very shortly.
Yeah.
There was about 10 different certifications we needed to underpin our work, to make sure that the product was food safe, food contact safe, there was no migrations, and it actually did compost. And I wasn't really happy until I'd actually got it in my own compost heap and actually got there and found it worked with my own hands. And sometimes there's theory and there's reality, and I'm pretty sure that we've done the right thing. We realize that not all waste ends up where it should, and I just wanted to make sure that if our products did end up somewhere where they shouldn't, that they would disappear and there wouldn't be a legacy on them.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually, I'm going to combine two questions here. One is, how have consumers responded to changing the packaging? Because many consumers don't like change, but this change is good for the environment. So what has their response been? Are you selling more of the plastic-free packaging sausages than when they were plastic wrapped?
We had, Linda, I'll pitch in if you may.
Yes, you start. I'll just add something once you've finished. I think it's more directed at you.
Yeah, we didn't tell the customers what we were doing to start off with, because we wanted to make sure it worked in a retail environment, and we had the same barcodes on the products before and after. So we didn't actually tell the retailers what we were doing. We just did it. And the impact on social media was immense immediately. So, we were getting like 180 customers a week saying, fantastic, well done, thank you, about time somebody did. But it's, yes, we have seen an uplift in sales, but more importantly, we've seen an uplift in inquiries from partners we'd never even heard of, people who said, look, we're interested in what you're doing. We would be interested in buying sausages from you because we feel that your brand has values that we can associate with. And I think that that's probably the strongest thing. It's not always about rate of sale in the supermarket. It's a very competitive environment, and there's some very strong own label offers. And it's always a difficult conversation for us as a small regional supplier to talk to a national buyer.
That's good.
I was just going to add, the other important consideration is what the consumer is being told to do with the packaging.
Yeah.
When they come to throw it away. the recycling of the conventional plastics. So, so the infrastructure isn't necessarily in place at the moment to support some of these bio-based plastics, and that's and that messaging to the consumer we have to get right on these types of materials as well.
Yes, thank you for that. That's actually, we have had some questions about that as well, on the fact that how are they things. And actually we had an interesting one. We have an attendee from Ecuador who was asking, how can you educate the population about compostable actions with these types of packaging? So there is a requirement for getting that information.
I think education is just hugely important, it can. We as a family, the way that we treat our waste is changed in the last 4 or 5 years. And, we've stopped having bonfires of plastic down the end of the garden in a bin, we don't do that anymore. And so I don't think it's about everybody doing zero waste perfectly, but it is about 8 billion people making some changes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would agree. I mean, education is important, but we also know that, in terms of some of the work we've looked into at labelling, that people make very quick decisions. When you've got a piece of rubbish that somebody perceives as rubbish, they just want to know what to do with it quickly. What bin do I put it in? I don't want to be confused. I want to know exactly what to do with that material. So education backed up by some very clear labeling is important.
So one of the things that we're looking to do is actually within the next 6 months is actually include branding on the film that actually says exactly how it should be disposed of, or the best end of life solution is. The cardboard trays are actually fairly self-explanatory. We put, that they are recyclable, and of course they're compostable, and that's clearly indicated on the pack.
I'm going to combine, Charles, I'm going to come to you on this one, and I'm combining 2 questions. One is that is the polymer commonly available in the market, and the other is, can it be produced on a large scale, for example, for supermarkets?
Yes and yes. Currently the capacity is about 13% of all plastic. So if there was, it's manufactured by BASF in PBAT. It's a very common type of plastic or polymer. The application for overwrap can be extended across retail widely. But it is very much, as Linda says, it is about ensuring that the public know exactly what to do with it, so that it ends up in the right spot.
Yes, indeed. And Linda, a very short question for you relating to the packaging tax. Will it apply to bio-PET?
Yes, it does.
Right. Thank you for answering that one. And yes, we've got another comment here that sort of, it's more, I'm not sure it's, we've been covering about what consumers do with it and how they can be instructed what to do with it. And one of them has raised a question of what instruction for disposal would you give to a consumer who doesn't have access to either home or industrial composting? But I think that links into Linda's question of trying to increase, or a response of trying to increase the availability on curbside collections. But the second part of the question is, have you heard of any concerns from consumers about packaging potentially contaminated with the meat in their home compost?
No, I haven't. Our sausages are perfectly formed. And no, generally you don't, unless somebody's trod on a pack of sausages, you don't get much meat on the cardboard or on the film. So it isn't an issue that's arisen. I think if we were packing mints, then we might need to think it in a slightly different way. But and, you know, it's a valid concern. I have this kind of dream of having, you know, community compost heaps and green recycling areas that can actually be used, you know, within communities. And you know, I think that we're certainly a long way from that, but it is maybe education that can change that. Yes,
I think, Linda, I think that there's definitely here on this is probably from the Defra and I think RAP are working on it, and it's the education side of things. And I know as IFST we try and produce various statements, and we have a statement on food waste, but it is a lot of it is coming down to education, isn't it? Now with the packaging that is where you can do something with it as a consumer, yes. it is actually getting that link. Yeah. Gosh, the questions are coming in thick and fast. I'm noticing we're down to our last sort of minute or two now. So just very quickly on the overwrap for the sausages, Charles, there's a question here, does it have any microbial properties?
No, I mean, it's inert. So it's food safe for food contact. It's a random polymer, so very similar to other petrochemicals or whatever. The microbial action that I was talking about was that microbes will actually secrete enzymes on it that actually will break it down and metabolize it. And that's how it's actually broken down.
Right, brilliant. And I'm looking at the time. I'm afraid I'm going to have to call a halt on the question Q&A now. But Charles, I'm just going to read one comment, which I think it says, "Well done, Charles. Small step for man and his company, giant leap for humankind." I think that's a very good comment to end on there.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you so much, Linda and Charles. They're fascinating presentations and excellent Q&A there. And thank you everyone from across the globe for attending the webinar today. Have the next slide, please. So if we didn't manage to answer your questions, because I know they were coming in thick and fast there, please do contact the speakers directly, and their details are on the screen now. We will share a recording of the webinar, including the Q&A session, to everyone who attended today via email and on our website. And if you would like to catch up on any past IFST webinars, please visit www.ifst.org/webinars. Before you log off, please do fill in our short survey, which will launch after the webinar ends. Next slide, please. Finally, our online spring conference, Food Science and Technology, Thinking Smart, Acting Smart, runs from the 26th of April to the 7th of May. We have some great speakers. You can network with fellow delegates, visit exhibitor booths, and take part in Q&A and polls. And there's a link to our conference page with more information at the bottom of the survey. As mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, please keep an eye on our IFST events page and email alerts for future webinars in our series on food waste. Thank you so much again, Linda and Charles, and everyone for attending today. Goodbye.